Welcome to Secret Story. About 6 years ago, my dad reunited with his high school sweetheart, and a year or so later, they got married. I loved Janet from the first time I met her. She was a great mom to me, and, if the noises that came from their bedroom on a regular basis were any indication, an amazing wife to my dad. My mom wasn't very happy when Dad found a new love, mainly because her experiences with men weren't great after she and Dad broke up, but she warmed to Janet after some time and seemed genuinely happy for him. My mom and Janet are very different people. They are both gorgeous on the outside. Is it wrong to think of your mom as gorgeous? But where my mom was, well, Janet was more of a friend than she was. I always felt very comfortable around her and thought I could talk to her about anything. That's why, when I had questions about personal things, I often went to her instead of Mom or Dad. I was a senior in high school, just turned 18, and unlike most of my friends, still a virgin. I met Teresa, or Tessa as we all called her, at the first family gathering after Dad and Janet got together. Our families all knew each other except for my generation, who had grown up apart from each other. We were typical cousins, I guess, playing games and sometimes getting along, sometimes not. It wasn't until high school that I began to see her differently. The first time I held her hand was at a family backyard movie night. We had those a couple of times the summer, and as many of us that could get together did so. Tessa and I were sitting in deck chairs behind everyone else, just chatting about the movie and school and stuff. I got up to get a cola and offered one to her. When I handed it to her, our hands touched and I felt something I had never felt before. I felt, I don't know, weird and wonderful all at the same time. When I sat back down, she bumped her chair closer and I felt her fingers intertwine themselves into mine. I looked at her and she was smiling at me. We held hands when we could without getting caught by the adults, and when the evening was over, she squeezed my hand before leaving. This was fun, was all she said. Over that summer, we found ourselves spending more time together, going rafting or swimming with our friends or riding our bikes into town. We didn't really plan it, things just happened that way. Then school started and I was pleased to learn we shared some classes. I was happy for any excuse to see her. Of course, teens are as cruel as they are intuitive, so when some of our classmates saw that we spent so much time together, they began to tease us, calling us kissing cousins. We both objected every time, but the taunting continued. I wanted to settle things my own way, but Tessa just told me to ignore them. Then came the fall ball, the first school dance of the year. One of the older guys in my class had procured some cheap wine, so a bunch of us gathered underneath the bleachers to get a taste of that illicit drink. I didn't much like it, but Tessa seemed to, so I hung around. A couple of guys tried getting handsy with her, but she sorted them out pretty quickly, punching one guy in the nose and twisting another's arm behind his back. Not too many guys messed with Tessa after that. After the ruckus, she came to me, "I'm bored. Can we just leave?" I agreed and we walked away from the dozen or so others with their taunts trailing in our wakes. As we walked past the gym, Tessa said she didn't want to go back inside and asked if I would walk her home. As soon as we were out of sight of the school, she slipped her hand into mine. It was as natural as breathing to us. We rounded the bend just short of her house when she stopped me. "Would it be so bad?" she asked. "Would what be so bad?" I asked in return. "If we were kissing cousins?" she asked. I admit, I had thought about kissing her a lot and other things, but her suggestion floored me. "I don't think we should," I said. "Our parents would really flip out. It's not natural for cousins to be together like that." "Oh, come on," she persisted. "I'm not talking about us doing anything, it's just kissing. Please. All the other girls at school talk about is kissing their boyfriends. I just want to know what it's like." "Okay," I said, and we turned to face other. I'm only a couple of inches taller than she is, so she didn't have to reach up very far for her lips to touch mine. We stayed like that for a half minute or so, then she stepped back. Then, just as suddenly, we broke it off. "That was really nice," I said. I leaned forward again but she stopped me. "We shouldn't, someone might see," she said. I looked around and couldn't imagine how anyone could possibly see us, but I didn't want to press the issue. Then she said the words that changed my life. "I really like you, Thomas." "I like you too, Tessa," I croaked, disbelieving that this pretty girl who I had only previously thought of as immediate family might end up being something more. I suppose now is as good a time as any to describe Tessa. Where her mom and my stepmom were slim and willowy, she was more solidly built, like the women on her father's side of her family. She had a round face framed by flaming red hair, the bluest eyes I had ever seen and long thick eyelashes. Her nose was short and a little crooked from an intimate meeting with a softball a few years earlier. I thought it was cute as were her lips, full and naturally pink over even white teeth. She had swimmer's shoulders, strong and round and broader than most girls. She was by no means fat, or even overweight to my mind, her body just seemed full. I guess that's where the term full-figured comes from. All I knew was I thought she was perfect that we walked the 100 or so yards to the end of her driveway. "Thanks for seeing me home safely," she said, "and thanks for the kisses." She kissed my cheek. "Good night, Thomas, see you tomorrow." "Good night, Tessa," was all I could manage. I'm not sure my feet even touched the ground as I walked the 10 minutes back to our house. After my dad and Janet got married, they bought a house near where they grew up and our families were only a half-mile or so apart, something for which I am now eternally grateful. Dad and Janet were obviously not expecting me home so early because when I walked into the kitchen, they were hurriedly rearranging their clothes. Their faces were flushed and Janet's lipstick was smeared. "Thomas, buddy. You're home early," Dad said, his breathing a bit ragged. "Tessa got bored at the dance so we walked home together," I said. "Didn't mean to disturb you." "It's okay, son," he said. "We were just—" "I know what you were just doing, Dad." I chuckled. "It's cool, you guys are married, after all, you're not dead." Janet blushed a little at the realization that I knew what they were up to, but how could I not? She was quite the screamer. Like 3 or 4 nights a week, I went to my room and sat by my computer desk, wondering what the hell had just happened to me and what this feeling was that filled me up. I wonder if Tessa would make those noises. I wondered. The next day, I got up and took a shower before going out to the kitchen for breakfast. Dad was gone to work but Janet was still home. Like I said, I always felt like I could talk to her about anything, so I decided to ask her about girls. "Can I ask you something?" I said as she placed a glass of milk in front of me. "Of course, sweetie, you can ask me anything. The kids at school all tease me and Tessa because we're such good friends, they call us names and stuff. It's really aggravating but Tessa just says to ignore them." "What sort of names do they call you?" she asked. "Kissing cousins," I said. "That's not the worst one but it's the one they all use. It's not fair, we're just friends. That's all. Kids can be cruel sometimes," she said. "You know, you and Tessa aren't actually cousins." She looked at me earnestly. "We're not," I said, a bit confused. "No, you're not," she said. "Think about it, cousins are the children of your parents' siblings, right?" I nodded. "But I'm not your mom, not your biological mom. Aunt Imelda is my sister, but she's not actually related to you, so neither is Tessa or any of their other kids. Understand?" "Oh," I said. "So that means if we did kiss it would be okay?" "I don't know about that," Janet said. "I'm not sure your aunt and uncle would be okay with it. You're not actually cousins but it's really only a technicality. For all intents and purposes you are related." "Oh," I said again. "Are you interested in Tessa?" she asked me. My hesitation gave me away. "Please tell me you haven't done anything silly." "What?" "No. No, we haven't. We just kissed, that's all." "When did this happen?" she asked. "Last night," I said. We were walking home and talking about how people at school tease us, and she said she wondered what it felt like to kiss a boy. I was curious too, so we just did it. Kissed, I mean. That's all. It was her turn. Oh. After a pause, I think we should talk. I know all that stuff. I protested, they teach all that in school now. I know they do, but that's just the mechanics of it, they don't talk about the emotions and feelings. That's what gets people into trouble. She reached out and held my hand and squeezed it. Unless you'd be more comfortable talking to your dad about this. No, it's fine, I said. I know I can talk to you about anything. Well, not anything. She put the word in air quotes. But almost anything. Tell me about you and Dad, why didn't you stay together after high school? She related the story to me about how they weren't ready for a serious relationship at the time and how they met at the airport. The rest, as they say, is history. But how did you know? I asked. How did you know he was the one? I can't explain it, I just knew, she said. Let me put it this way. When we were apart, all I could think about was being with him, and when we were together all I could think about was never letting him leave. Oh, I said for a third time. Oddly, that's how I felt about Tessa. So how was it? She asked. How was what? The kissing. She giggled. You are just like your father, so easily distracted. He wasn't very distracted last night. I blurted out before I even realized it. Janet gasped and covered her mouth with her hands. Oh God, I am so sorry. I shouldn't have said that. I got up to leave, but she stopped me. No, you shouldn't have, but it's all right. You're an adult now and you need to understand about and love and everything in between. She took a deep breath and smiled. No, your father was not very distracted last night. How does he do it? I asked. I am not discussing the details of my life with your father. Thomas. She said firmly. But I will say this. She curled two fingers together and flexed the tips toward her palm. This is the answer. This and a little thing called a Grafenberg spot. Look it up and I promise you will make any woman you are with very, very happy. It was all I could do not to bolt out of my chair to my room and look it up. Thanks, Mom, you are the best. I said. Over the next week, Tessa and I continued to spend as much time together as we could, no longer hiding our affection for each other at school. That night, I asked my dad and Janet to come into the living room. I need to talk to you guys about Tessa. I took a deep breath before continuing. We like each other. A lot, but we aren't sure what to do about it. Do you love her? Asked my dad. I don't know that I feel that way about Tessa, I said. It's early days. Stop fooling yourself, Janet said, coming over to hug me. It's as plain as day to anyone who's paying attention. Maybe, I said. We talked about it this afternoon, we don't think we're doing anything wrong. I know it's like we're related, but we really aren't. Is it wrong to feel this way about each other? Dad took a deep breath. I have to ask you something and I need you to be completely honest with me. I nodded for him to go ahead. Have you and Tessa been intimate? No, I said. Not yet. But you want to be, he said. I do. I hope she does too. You know about taking precautions, Janet said. Of course I do, I said. We get bombarded with it at school. And yet, accidents happen, don't they? She said. Promise us that you will be very careful. I promise, I said. They got up to leave. Will you come over to Tessa's house with me? We need to tell Aunt Mel and Uncle Brian what happened. Tessa and I talked about it and we want to tell them together. Of course, just let me run upstairs for a minute and we'll go over, Janet said when she was out of earshot. I looked at my father. How could you have ever let her go? I was young and stupid, I guess, he replied with a chuckle. She's really special. I know, I said. And how do you know? He asked that. I just looked at him, put two fingers together and crooked them toward my palm. Oh Stephen, yes. Right there. I mimicked her voice from the previous evening. I can hear everything. Everything? He said, stunned. Everything, I said. That a half hour later, we were in my aunt and uncle's kitchen telling them about how we felt. Tessa's dad was not very happy about it, but her mom was cool. Relax Brian, he's already 18 and she will be next month. They're almost adults and I don't think there's anything we could do to stop them. Could your father have done anything to stop us at that age? No, I suppose not, he conceded. Then he looked at me. Don't you dare hurt my daughter. He admonished me. And be careful. The last thing you two need is to have an unfortunate accident. Tessa bristled at that. Was I an unfortunate accident, Daddy? She glared at him. Yes, I know, I can read a calendar. Of course not, sweetie, her mom said. It's just that he's worried about you. People will talk when this all comes out. I think it's already out, I said. Everyone at school is talking about us. The rumor mill is running at full speed by now. We chatted for another hour or so, then my dad said he needed to get home. You guys go ahead, I said. I need to talk to Tessa for a bit. I won't be long. Just talk. Her father said. Yes, sir, just talk. We need a plan for school tomorrow. Tessa's hand slipped into mine. You might as well accept him, Daddy. This is happening whether you like it or not. She leaned over and kissed me. Jesus, Mary and Joseph, Teresa, are you trying to stop my heart? He complained. He stood up. Remember what I said. He turned and left the room. He'll be okay, just give him time, Aunt Mel said. Just so you know, I've known ever since you told Janet. She told me straight away and she predicted you would both come to us to talk about it. She hugged her daughter. You are so grown up. Then she hugged me. Be careful, for heaven's sake. Yes ma'am, I said. Tessa and I went out onto the front porch and sat in the swing. There wouldn't be too many times we could do that before the weather turned cold. That went better than I thought it would, she said. Yeah, me too, I said. What are we going to do tomorrow? We're going to do everything we normally do, she said. We will walk to school together, have lunch together, hold hands, hug, and I will try not to kiss you too much. She leaned in and kissed me. Thank you, Thomas, for standing up with me. Of course, I said. Always. We kissed again, and I excused myself to go home. Can't you stay a bit longer? She said. No, I have to leave because if I stay things might get out of hand, and if we're going to do it, it will be someplace more private and more comfortable than the swing on your parents' front porch. We kissed again. I think we need to stop by the drugstore, she said. Way ahead of you. I said, and I walked away. The next day we walked into school hand in hand just like our friends and classmates who were dating did. The looks and giggles were still there, but many of them were silenced by Tessa's glare. Then as I walked out of first class, the teacher handed me a note that I read the note as I walked. She's a special girl, it read, treat her right. It was signed, Mrs. D. Yup, the rumor mill was working hard. 3 weeks later was Tessa's birthday, her 18th. At her request, it was kept low-key, just family and a few friends that had accepted us as a couple. As the small party wound down and we bid our guests good night, Janet came over and pulled me aside. Your father and I are going to sleep over here tonight, she said. In Tessa's room. She looked at me to make sure I understood. There is wine in the fridge, keep it to 1 bottle please. She leaned over and kissed my cheek. Make her birthday a memorable one. She held up her 2 fingers and wiggled them as she smiled and turned away. Then Tessa motioned for me to come over. I have exciting news. She whispered. My mom said I can sleep over at your house tonight. I know, my mom told me. I said excitedly. When should we leave? Soon, she whispered. Just let me say good night. She went into the living room. Thomas and I are going for a walk. Don't wait up for us. She went to her father and hugged him. Good night, Daddy. I love you. Good night, Princess, I love you too. He turned away and wiped a tear. His baby was all grown up, or in an hour or less, she would be. She went to her mom. Thanks, Mom. She whispered. Love you. Have fun, sweetie. She said. Then she looked at me and winked as she held up the same two fingers and wiggled them. When we got inside, she dropped the small bag she had brought with her on the floor and wrapped her arms around me. So where's my birthday present? She asked. I gave you your present today, I said. Not that present, she said. What's the hurry? I asked. We have all night. It's going to take all night if I have my way. She purred. You pour the wine, I'll go get ready. I opened the bottle and poured 2 glasses, taking them into the living room. Thankfully, I didn't have to wait long. Ahem, I heard from the doorway to the hall. You like? Tessa was a vision in white. Her hair and makeup looked professionally done and she was wearing a long sheer nightgown that left very little to the imagination. My God, you are so beautiful. I breathed. Where did you get that? Your mom took me shopping, can you believe it? She said. Last week, when you and the boys were playing football, we went shopping. She glided over to me and wrapped her arms around me. This was all her idea, the party, them staying over and leaving us alone. Everything. She kissed me, softly and tenderly. I have so been looking forward to this. She smiled and picked up her wine glass, taking a sip while looking straight into my eyes. That we sat on the couch, then I stood up and took her hand. Ready? I asked. She smiled and nodded and we held hands as we went to my room. Janet had obviously been busy. The room had about a dozen candles in various spots, and the bed was freshly made. On my nightstand was a small bag tied with a ribbon and a card was beside it. I picked it up and saw it was addressed to Tessa. I handed it over and she opened it. She smiled when she read it, then she handed it to me. Dearest Teresa, it read, I hope tonight will be one neither of you ever forgets. Pay attention to him and tell him to pay attention to you. Just make sure that, whatever happens, it's what you both want. Trust him, he knows what to do. Love. Aunt J. This is so surreal, she said. I'll bet we are the only people in our school that have their parents' permission to. It is surreal. I said. Are you nervous? I asked. Of course I'm nervous. She giggled. I've never seen one up close like this before. Relax, I said, we have all night. Is that for me? She asked playfully. Only for you. I stammered. Her eyes were closed, but I remembered something I'd seen in a video. Look at me. We should do that again very soon. We will, I promise. She said. I love you. Teresa Angela Marie Kolyakovo. I love everything about you, your body, your heart, your mind and your soul. When I say you are perfect, it's because you are perfect for me. If you believe nothing else in your life, believe that. She was speechless, a tear trickled out of her eye which she wiped away. You have no idea what that means to me. She leaned forward and kissed me. Remember that night we told my parents about us? I told my mom that I thought I loved you and she warned me about telling someone you love them too soon. She kissed me again. I believe you because I feel exactly the same way about you. We have been friends and enemies and then best friends and now, we are something more. She said, hand me that iPad. I passed it to her and she tapped the screen a few times. I tried to look at it but she hid it from me. What are you doing? I asked. Homework. She smiled. She watched it for a few moments and then set it aside on the bed so I could see the screen. "Stand up," she commanded. "We're doing that." She tried to emulate what she had seen in the video. She kept trying but was unable to accomplish that feat. "I'm going to have to practice that," she said softly. "I saw that in a video," she smiled. "It seemed like the guy liked it, so I thought you would too." After a quick relief break, we cuddled in. Soon we were asleep. Neither of us being accustomed to sharing a bed with another person. We woke each other up a few times through the night, each time resulting in another session. By the time the sun began brightening the sky, we had done it 5 times in 10 hours. As we lay together recovering from what we would soon start to refer to as our morning exercise, I said, "I wish we could wake up like this every day." "Me too, I'm really glad we did," I said. That we napped for another couple of hours and then enjoyed our first shower together. "That was fun," Tessa said. "We need to do that more often too." After a quick breakfast, we went into town and she somewhat sheepishly went to the pharmacist to ask for the Plan B pill. After enduring a brief lecture on the dangers of unprotected, we left and I dropped her off at her parents' house. We stood on the porch and quietly relived our night together. "I'm not sure what the protocol is," she said. "Do I thank you? Do we shake hands?" "I think you kiss me goodbye," I said. "I don't know about you, but I'm going to need a nap this afternoon." "Me too," she said. "We kissed tenderly, some night," she said. As I descended the steps, I heard my stepmom's voice from around the side of the house. "Did you kids have fun?" she teased, knowing full well exactly how much fun we had. "Fun is one way to put it," I replied. "I'm going home to bed. I'll see you later." That night was indeed the first of many nights together. Our families accepted our relationship to the point that within the month, Tessa had all but moved into our house, spending as many nights as she could with me, as quietly and as often as we could. From the looks we got from my parents some mornings, it was clear we were not as quiet as we thought we'd been. Copyright 2024, all rights reserved. No part of this story can be reproduced in any form or by any electronic or mechanical means without written permission from the author. All characters are fictitious, and any similarity to actual people, living or dead, events, or locales is entirely coincidental unless otherwise stated.